and it's an option. You don't have to do it.
Um, let's move on to fall sports here real quick and where we are right now. And I know you and I talked about this a lot, that there's every option is still on the table. Maybe it's just me, I don't know, but it feels like phases are opening up and we're moving the right direction. First of all, what's your optimism level right now that you'll be as quote unquote normal as possible when September rolls around?
I think it's very realistic that we will be able to offer, at least in most parts of the state, depending on what happens over the next couple of months, a full slate of fall activities, including football. I just checked my emails. We're talking here, so I'm paying attention, but I was hoping to give you some breaking news. We're expecting at any moment some guidelines coming from the state. So out of the governor's office in partnership with Department of Health and OSPI. I know I've been saying this for a couple of weeks. I think they're getting tired of my emails. I might be blocked even by now. I'm trying not to be a pest, but I know how incredibly busy, and they got more than just high school sports and middle school sports to worry about. But we have a lot of people really interested in getting going. So I'm pretty confident. I'm more 6 weeks ago, I was trying to be confident and believe it. And now I'm very confident that we will have that opportunity. I think it'll be less restrictive, possibly even than what we saw with some of the national guidelines coming out, just based on some very preliminary conversations. Until we see it, we won't know. But looking at what came out Friday for professional and youth sports was a lot more hopeful, and then follow-up conversations. So our board this weekend did make some decisions regarding this. Our priority is to start on time and go business as usual. Our fallback plan, our first option, is to push the start a little bit more into September after Labor Day, for the reason being that would allow those schools that maybe are just lagging a little bit, or those counties that are lagging to get to phase 4 to get there, and that we would be able to start everybody. We still need to work through the details, is that, what we allow before that in the areas that are able to participate. The board philosophically agrees that we should not hold students back because not everybody can do it. They've already lost so much time and opportunity. So that was a pretty significant move. And in all honesty, I'm very confident we're going to provide opportunities for students. Now, who's all is going to be in the stands? I don't know that yet. It looks more and more hopeful that we'll have more and more people there, which, kids want to play in front of their friends and family and community.
Well, it's an economic reality for schools as well, and how much does that come into play? Is it worth gambling to put football on when knowing that several schools, the ones that ADs I talked with, half of their athletic budget comes from the gate of football, and where are you going to make that up this year? I mean, there's no other extra dollars. How strong of a talk, I guess, about making, you hate to make it come down to economics, but let's be honest, that gate pays for a lot of non-revenue sports. And, how, I guess, where is the board on that? Is that a serious consideration still at this point, or how seriously are they taking the finances in?
Very serious. I mean, the fact of the matter is, for us, we could lose up to $750,000 of revenue if we don't have, over half of our revenue comes from state tournaments. And so, but we are never going to jeopardize the health and safety of anybody, kids especially, at the expense. We can survive with no sports, right? It's painful. We all hate it. So we're going to find the balance. And, that's where we're hopeful that this concept, and that's why we're really promoting the foundation. This was in the plan anyway. It was part of my pitch to get the job, believe it or not, was to have a foundation. The school district I come from has a very vibrant foundation. And as a principal, I was able to pay for things for students that they couldn't get in most other places, whether it was getting into the dentist, the doctor, a new pair of shoes. There's nothing better as a principal of a kid that you've been dealing with issues that aren't fun, to be able to take him or her shopping and be able to give shoes. And it's not for me, but it's rewarding. And so that's what we want the foundation to do. So hopefully from what I'm hearing from people about how important it is from sports, if we get in a situation where schools are pinched on that, or the association is pinched, that we will have people with the means to get us by until we can get back to where we can self-fund. So schools, yeah, there's expenses also saved with some of these adjustments. And so, and the bottom line is, Paul, less than 2% of a school district's budget goes to extracurricular activities.
Right.
That's national statistics. Now, I don't have Washington's, but I can quote you the national ones. And in some places, it's closer to 1%. So there's a big value there. It's around community and soft skills taught. And, we're going to have to find a way to help each other through this next few months or year, but we'll get there.
Yeah, so we'll keep that optimistic look alive and well, and hopefully the gates will be open. And I know you're waiting on some more direction, but some of the things you're expecting to get out of the governor's office and OSBI, I assume, are the different phases. That if you're in phase 3, what is allowed, the 50-person limit, who's that attached to? And I've asked this question because I'm involved with some other activities, a concert series down in Chehalis, and we want to know, well, if there's a group of 50 and another group of 50, how far do the groups of 50 have to be apart from each other? And there's just considerations like that. If you have enough room to be able to space enough people out and where they count, and then being inside and outside. But I do want to bring up another potential. And I know I know your baseline answer. Baseline answer is we're going to compete and participate. Whatever we are allowed to do, we can get in. Let's say the Seattle area remains in phase 3, and that is clearly a huge portion of 3A and 4A. That's a big block of those. But for instance, the 2Bs are most in Eastern Washington and a huge down in Southwest Washington and a few elsewhere, but they could go. They got phase 4 and all the way. Is there even a possibility of splitting the seasons? For instance, 3A and 4A football would get moved, but you would keep football for 2Bs, and is that even a possibility of allowing whatever classification is open and ready to play? Let's get that classification in and going, and then deal with the other ones as we can.
Yeah, the board did make a philosophical decision yesterday that we would continue offering the sports activities, even if there were hot spots that maybe couldn't do it. So if we were going to move a entire classification, we would need to see that issue, I think, more on a statewide or a majority aspect. I don't think we've closed off any options. We've just kind of prioritize what we want to do. So, we were talking about, well, do we move football to the spring, fall sports to the spring? Well, looking at that, then what do you do with spring sports? Move them to the fall because they're mostly outdoors, and then you end up canceling on them 2 seasons in a row potentially, and those athletes miss out twice. So we backed off that as a higher priority, not that we're going to say no. So I would say anything's on the table, and that's not just a PC answer. But it would be probably really difficult to move it by classification just because it's going to be impacted so differently around the state. I think it's more along the lines, would we continue 4A football, 3A football if the Puget Sound, if the Seattle schools couldn't do it, or, you could have a school board decide they're not going to allow it. But that shouldn't be a decision for 294 other school districts. So.
Right, exactly. Well, it's going to be interesting how it plays out here. And again, I know everyone is hot for an answer, but again, it's a wait and see game right now. If the phasing continues like it has been, and we're moving toward, I don't think there's going to be any issue to get started. We just have to hope that there isn't a flare-up, or certainly a flare-up large enough that will have an impact again. But man, I guess you and the board and every school district and your entire staff have now been trained under fire of how to react to something completely out of it. And I want to touch on this again, Mick, and this is, I don't think we can spread this message enough. Yes, it's difficult right now, difficult to go without sports, but those skills that you hope athletes take. And one of the major reasons why we have high school sports and activities is to be able to develop those leadership skills, skills of taking on, unforeseen circumstances and things like that. And this is exactly why it's a lesson right in front of us of exactly why these skills are important to have in our kids growing up. And, nothing against math, but I just don't see a whole lot of leadership happening in an algebra class compared to on a volleyball court or even in the band, for example.
Yeah, no, totally agree. And, you look at what's going on in our country right now beyond the pandemic, and it's going to take strong leadership to resolve, and develop a plan and execute a plan. And you look at our history, as grim as it is in some chapters, any significant change have come from the leadership of our kids, the youth, right? And we are in a situation that we can impact that. We won't be the ones necessarily who drive that change, but we can create the environment to empower those that will and make this a better place for my grandkids, right, and their grandkids, so we don't continue this generation after generation of frustration and really injustice. And so we get the opportunity to do that as the WIAA. Like, we get to be direct impactors of that. And so we're working on how do we get better at that in the midst of everything else. And so at the beginning, when I said I wouldn't trade this job for anything, I wouldn't trade this job for anything, because, we should all leave our mark somehow, some way. And if nothing else, if it's just simply to be the guy that's helping provide opportunities for students that are going to change our world, what better job can you have than that?